South Africa is heading into one of its most difficult budget moments in years. Finance Minister Godongwana is expected to deliver the 2026 national budget under intense pressure from rising debt, slow economic growth, and growing demands from political parties, labor unions, and ordinary citizens. At the heart of the debate is a simple but critical question. How do you fund a struggling economy without placing more strain on already stretched households? Here's what that means for South Africans. The big picture. South Africa's economy remains under pressure. Growth is expected to stay below 2% in the near term, far below what is needed to reduce unemployment. Unemployment itself remains one of the highest in the world, hovering above 30%, and government debt continues to rise, with debt to GDP levels approaching 75% or more. That means a significant portion of the national budget is already committed to servicing debt, simply paying interest. Experts warn that this limits what is known as fiscal space. In simple terms, fiscal space is the government's ability to spend money without risking financial instability, and right now, that space is extremely limited. Political pressure on the budget. Finance Minister Godongwana is not just balancing numbers, he's balancing politics. President Cyril Ramaphosa, in his recent State of the Nation address, emphasized priorities such as economic growth, infrastructure investment, job creation, and strengthening state capacity. But delivering on those promises requires funding, and that's where the tension begins. Lessons from the 2025 VAT protest. One major lesson shaping the 2026 budget comes from the backlash against the proposed VAT increase in 2025. Civil society groups, labor unions, and opposition parties strongly opposed any increase in value-added tax. They argued that VAT disproportionately affects poorer households. The protests forced government to rethink its approach, and now any discussion of raising taxes is politically sensitive. What different groups want? Let's look at what key stakeholders are demanding. Government priorities. The ruling party wants economic recovery, infrastructure expansion, and improved public services. Opposition parties. Parties like Action SA, Good Party, African Christian Democratic Party, and Build One South Africa argue for cutting wasteful spending, tackling corruption, and improving efficiency in government. Opposition leaders argue that simply raising taxes is not the solution. Labor groups. Trade unions such as Congress of South African Trade Unions or COSATU are pushing for wage protection, social spending, and the introduction of a basic income grant. Civil society. Groups like Organization Undoing Tax Abuse or OUTA are calling for accountability, transparency, and stronger oversight of public funds. Key economic concept explained. To understand the budget, we need to break down a few important terms. Bracket creep. This happens when tax thresholds are not adjusted for inflation, so even if your salary stays the same in real terms, you end up paying more tax. Here's what that means for South Africans. You take home less money without any official tax increase. Basic income grant. This is a proposed monthly payment to unemployed or low-income citizens. Supporters say it could reduce poverty, stimulate demand, and support economic activity, but critics argue it is expensive and difficult to sustain. Illicit trade impact. Illicit trade, including illegal cigarettes and goods, reduces government tax revenue. Experts estimate that billions of rands are lost every year. That's money that could have been used for healthcare, education, or infrastructure. Security and spending pressures. Another key pressure on the budget is security. Deputy President Paul Mashatile recently told Parliament that government is investing heavily in intelligence and policing. This follows the failure seen during the 2021 South African unrest, where intelligence gaps contributed to widespread violence. Mashatile says government is now strengthening intelligence systems, modernizing policing, and recruiting 20,000 additional police officers. We will not be caught off guard again, he told lawmakers. But all of this requires funding, and that adds even more pressure to the national budget. What the budget could realistically achieve? Experts suggest a few likely outcomes: modest increases in social spending, continued infrastructure investment, limited tax adjustments, possibly through bracket creep, and efforts to stabilize debt. However, a large-scale stimulus package is unlikely simply because there is not enough fiscal space. Risks and challenges. Experts warn of several risks. If taxes are increased too much, economic growth could slow. If spending is cut too deeply, social inequality could worsen. And if debt continues rising, future budgets become even more constrained. One economist explained it this way: South Africa is walking a tightrope. Every decision has consequences. What it means for you? For ordinary South Africans, this budget could affect how much tax you pay, the cost of living, access to services, and job opportunities. Here's what that means for South Africans. The budget is not just about numbers, it's about daily life. As Finance Minister Godongwana prepares to deliver the 2026 budget, the stakes could not be higher. Balancing economic recovery, political expectations, and fiscal discipline is no easy task, and the decisions made in this budget will shape South Africa's future, not just for the next year, but for years to come.